please stand for the pledge? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, today is Tuesday, November 12th, the time being 6:55. We will call the meeting of the Greensburg City Council to order immediately following our Board of Works meeting. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. Amy, would you please call the roll?
Jamie Kane.
Here.
Mark Harmon.
Here.
Evan Fleetwood.
Here.
Rodney King.
Here.
Daryl Poling.
Here.
Daryl Tressler.
Here.
And Vieta McKenzie.
You all should have received a copy of the minutes from October 2nd. Any edits, additions? If not, those will stand approved as presented. Okay, old business. Julie Nobby, you're up first this evening. Ordinance 24-23, which is the update to the City Greensburg Employee Handbook.
In your packet, you should have a new red line copy and a final copy of the handbook. I did talk with Joseph Pettygrove. He's an HR attorney. He suggested a few wording changes in the red line copy. You can see all the comments that he made. For the most part, it was just a few minor wording changes or cleaning up some wording to clarify things. So just looking for approval of that. Any questions?
Did come with favorable recommendation from the Board of Works as well.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion we approve ordinance 2024-23.
Motion's been made by Jamie, second by Kevin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Okay,
Perfect.
thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for all your help. Okay, Zach, you've got ordinance 24-24.
Evening, Council. Ordinance 24-24, as discussed at last month's meeting, has not changed, and this is updating the current erosion control permit fees as collected by the utilities to change some of the pricing, and then most importantly cover all of our inspection fees and design review fees from third-party vendors.
Is that a January 1st start date, or does it start upon passage?
We'll say it starts upon passage,
Okay.
because it does not say otherwise.
That's fine. Any other questions for Zach? It's on second reading. Is there a motion to approve 24-24?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made by Jamie, second by Daryl Poling. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Brooke, with Reedy Financial, you're here this evening. We're going to talk about the rate studies, the rate study that was done encompassing 25, 26, 27.
Yep. All right. We will just start with the summary, so that way we don't have to walk through the extra large reports. So we have been spending the last 6 months or so looking at water, sewer, and stormwater. So what we have come up with is working with Mayor and Donna. We settled on what has been presented to the Water Board and the Board of Works so far. So we looked at test year 2023, and we took your operation and maintenance costs are going to be the first thing that we look at. So test year, we had to make some adjustments, so we included the salary raises that will be in your salary ordinance for next year. We included an adjustment for personal services, primarily for sewer, to make sure we're encompassing the fact that their test year is a little bit lower due to lower staffing. So we added that in there, and then there's also an inflationary adjustment of 3.57%. That's just a 6-year state average, and that is operational only. That is not for construction costs, so that goes towards just your operation and maintenance budget. With that being said, and I'll kind of combine the two reports as we go through here since it's a lot of the same information. For water, the total O&M budget for these rates that can be supported is $2,026,500, and sewer is at $2,409,900. So after we gather that and we work through all the adjustments, we look at your debt next. So With your bond covenants, you currently statutorily need to be between 115 to 125%. Both utilities are meeting and exceeding that debt coverage ratio. For water, just to note, the 2007 A bond retires in December of 2028, and for sewer, you have your 2016 revenue bonds that retire in November of 2028 as well. So you'll have 2 bonds falling off for the utilities. And for your actual rates to be determined, we use a 5-year average annual debt service rather than your maximum annual debt service. So for water, your 5-year average is $1,905,000, and for sewer, that 5-year average is $1,420,000. With your maximum debt service on both of those just being slightly more than your average. When we do look at the rates and what can be supported, we always look at your capacity for new debt if needed. Both utilities have that capacity just based off of your debt service coverage. But with that being said, if you were to decide to get a new debt for the utilities, we would have to look at other items such as your extensions and replacements contribution for capital and projects that would take away from other areas. But essentially you do have that capacity. Which, after we look at that, the next thing that we fund based off of Greensburg's needs is that extensions and replacements. Historically, you guys fully funded your extensions and replacements based off of a composite depreciation factor. So your total assets multiplied by that composite depreciation factor. For water, it's 2%. And for sewer, it's 2.5%, and that's just based off of like a 50-year average asset life. With this rate study, we readjusted based off of the capital project. So your ENR is actually being funded based off of that capital improvement plan. That was provided by the city, and we worked through that with Mayor and Donna and the superintendents as well, and kind of prioritized those projects and what is high priority. With all of the moving around, we came up with funding it based off of an average. So you'll have some years that are a little bit lower and some years higher. And with water, that average capital spending annually is a little over $1.6 million. And with sewer, the average annual contribution is a little bit over $2.2 million. With sewer, we are recommending a larger initial transfer to ENR of a little over $2.7 million, and that's just due to the cash reserves. They have excess cash reserves in their operational fund, so that can be moved to the ENR just to help with those projects. After compiling all of that, we get to your user rates and charges. For water, after the final phase, it's still breaking into the 3 years phases that you guys typically do. A 4,000 gallon consumption bill will be right around $52.23, which is about a $10 a month difference. And then I do like to note on water that TIF credit is still staying on this ordinance until that debt is paid off. And then on sewer, the bill based off of 4,000 gallon consumption is $58.40. It's about $9 difference per month for those users. Before I move on to any other parts, are there any questions regarding water or sewer?
What's the average water sewer consumption? So you're saying based on 4,000, but what's the average in our community? Do we know?
I can get back with you on that. I do have all of your consumption data for 2023 that we've worked through. Unless
I
you
don't know
know.
off the top of my head. That's an average residential user.
So an average, that's why I'm just trying to estimate what that is, right?
Yeah.
So
If you throw in all of the large users, the average is gonna be higher, but 4,000 is what you base for an average residential user.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And then the only other piece I'd like to see, maybe before next month, that we've got in the past with these is typically we get surrounding communities or other communities our size, and with that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, what our rates would be compared to where their rates are at. And I don't see that anywhere in any of these packets. That's something
Yeah.
I'd like to see before next month if we could.
We can add that in there
Okay.
and broken out in the phases. I was just going to see if I had your consumption here. Because I can see based off, water has a declining rate block schedule, so for residential, I might not have printed it because it's a very large page.
It's okay. I mean, if we could get that maybe before next month. And just
Yeah.
make sure, we're basing this off 4,000 gallons usage. I'm just trying to figure out what that would be for an average. I'm more concerned with the residential usage. That's, yeah.
Yeah, and the 4,000 gallon is what most places around the state use when looking at your average bill. We typically say that's a family of 4. But I can look at Greensburg's average and tell you exactly what each household is. I will say, it looks like based off of your declining block, most of yours are hitting within that first 500 cubic feet. 500 cubic feet translates to just slightly less than 4,000 gallons. 5.35 cubic feet is what we say for 4,000 gallons. So you have a lot of bills hitting that, but then you also have a lot that are in the 1,500 and 2,500. So I can pull that information and get you an average close to.
Thank you.
Yep. And then,
Brooke, just for clarification, when we're talking about the $10, that's at the end of the 3 phase. It's not per year
Yep.
per phase.
correct,
It is, in theory, $333 a month per year,
yeah.
just as a clarification point.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And while she's pulling up, I will make the comment that this is very similar to what was done in 2021. It's not much different.
Yeah, we tried to make sure that it was all very close. Just for ease of purposes, I did have her go ahead and print out just the rates and charges page, so you guys can kind of see that with this. This is in the total report, but this is the page. Thank you. And while those are being passed around, that's just the proposed rates and charges. It's in the report, and at the top of that page, I'll show you the page number still of where it is at included in each rate study. But I just wanted to have that printed because that is obviously your guys' biggest concern. And it kind of shows each phase, every single declining rate block, every single charge that'll be on the water bill, and it's broken out by phase. And also just to know, our rates and charges already include, so it shows the TIF excess credit, and then those 3 phases out are capturing that. The way the ordinance lays it out is what the phase is prior to that TIF excess. So if you look at the ordinance and then you're looking at our rate study, that's gonna be your difference there, is that TIF excess credit. I wanted to make sure in the report, so you guys could see what that monthly difference was, that I'm already including that TIF credit in the water side of it. And then the other things we looked at on water and sewer each were non-recurring charges. So what does it cost to the city on the plant side for someone to connect, for a new connection, a new development to come, and what should that be? So we looked at 2 charges, a capacity fee and an availability fee. A capacity fee is just a one-time charge to a new user that's connecting to the plant, and it's recouping the cost for what that what capacity they're going to be sending to the plant for purposes of their meter size. So it's broken down per EDU, so each meter size is just rated an EDU just out of the AWWA manual. And a residential is 1 EDU. So if a residential wanted to connect to water and these rates were implemented, it would be $2,161 per residential person. And the way that works is and it's laid out in the report, but if a 2-inch meter comes, you would multiply that $2,000 charge by that EDU number, and then that would be their cost to connect, because a bigger meter size is obviously going to have bigger flow. For sewer, that charge is $7,663 per EDU. And all of this is saying is this is the maximum that you would want to charge somebody, because that is what your assets and your total outstanding debt and your equivalent bills are calculating. So you wouldn't want to charge any more than that, because you wouldn't be able to support that calculation. And currently for water, there's a connection charge, and it's $750 for a residential. And then for 1 inch, I believe it's $1,000, and anything higher than a 1 inch is actual cost of materials and supplies. The other fee we looked at is an availability fee. This is going to be based off of the individual that wants to connect. So it is for a new connection, or it's also just to make that utility available to that person if they want to do so. It is a monthly fee up until the point of connection. So it is just calculated based off of how much O&M is it going to cost to do this, what is the linear feet of connection, how many properties is this benefiting, and then it spits out a calculation. So if that were to be adopted, it's on that individual basis. It's not just a set rate. And then we provide that sheet, so that way they would just have to fill in 2 numbers, and then it would calculate that charge. And that would be a new charge. You guys do not currently have anything like that. And the back of the summary is just a comparison between water and sewer on the annual spending, so you guys can kind of see how much spending is in the capital improvement plan for each utility. But then also within the rate report itself are the specific projects laid out. So if you wanted to see that, they are in the rate report. And that the projects are primarily where the rates are funding these projects. So rather than taking out a debt, it's being cash funded, which is great. Are there any questions so far on water or sewer?
Looking at water, the adjustment there at the end of that report's on page 4 of that, where it's the actual 23, then forecasted 24. It's got to adjust for civic payroll entries.
Yes. So when there was the conversion for civic in 23, civic did not implement their, and Amy might be able to explain this a little bit better. So there are some payroll accounts that are not hitting the actual expense line items. They're hitting a liability. So when you pull the reports, it's not showing the full amount that it should be. So we took the clerk treasurer's side of numbers that's on your annual report versus what the actual trial balance that we run out of the software is showing, and that difference is what you're seeing there is the total adjustment. So that's really the clerk treasurer's numbers are what we definitely agree with, and we went through it with Donna as far as the personal services. It was showing just too low of a number, and we could tell by what she pulled that Amy has a sheet that she goes off of that proofs it all out.
And second question on the, also on the water, on the, for 23, it shows the coverage at like 1.61, and then the pro forma at 1.86. Being,
You're gonna have
that's
to-
a pretty strong number, is it not?
You're on the pro forma tab.
You know, in the water again.
Yeah, so, and that's just due to the ENR. So ENR will affect your coverage a little bit. So it is going higher because of those numbers that we're putting into that transfer. But that is a good number.
And when they test the coverage ratios on the bonds, do they test that annually?
It just depends. I mean, yes, S&P says they're going to do it annually. SRFs of the world, if you ever want to go for a new debt, we have to prove that out, and they're obviously going to look at that, and they're going to look at how much capacity. So if something major were to happen and you guys needed to go get a new debt, we do like to have that extra room in there in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. Those are great questions.
Any other questions for Brooke on this topic? We do have, if you're thinking of that, we do have an ordinance number that has been assigned to this. We had some issues getting the ordinance created. It will be up for second reading in December. The idea is to get this implemented for January 1st, 2025. We would ask, the changes from the previous ordinance that were done in 2021 are simply the numbers. If the numbers seem appropriate for at least consideration on first reading, we would add, do you know what the number is?
2024, 25.
Yep, for
Water,
water.
26 is sewer.
2025 for water, 2026 for sewer. 2024, 26.
And the water board did recommend a favorable opinion on the water rate study.
Do you have any major construction things that we're anticipating in the next 3 years?
Yes. There are quite a few, which drives the vast majority of the rates. Both water and wastewater are represented if you have specific questions, but the highlights include, on the water side, the North Broadway section from 4th Street under the bypass and 10th Street over to Lincoln, which is blown apart 5 or 6 times in the last year. That is a major construction project. Second would be west of the railroad tracks, and I did create a paper with all of this, and I've just put it in your folder. I realized I hadn't put it in there, but the second would be west of Delta Faucet around to the park, and then that would be completed as part of the Park Road project. That will loop the west side of the city and our fire protection and water services. That's been on Rick's agenda for quite a long time. Those are the 2 major water projects that are supported under this rate study, specifically to water, in addition to the normal operating expenses to which Brooke has identified and what we would call maintenance items. Those are the 2 big capital projects. On the wastewater side, there is a line that runs under the bypass from sort of behind Rural King under the bypass to 10th Street that is in significant failure. And so the idea would be to do the Broadway water line project and the Broadway force main sewer line project at the same time. That would allow us to generate economies of scale of only being in the state right of way, having to do jack and bore under the bypass. Those projects are in our head from our leadership team are sister projects. The second one would also be under the sewer, will be West Main Street from the rail headed east. That is being done, or that is being proposed to be done as the state of Indiana is reconstructing Main Street in 2026, 2027. This will save us a lot of effort because they're going to rebuild the road, and then we have a sewer line under it that is our responsibility, but yet their contractor's already on site, their maintenance of traffic, they're already paying for all the pavement. All we have to do is sort of pay for the sewer line. So that is quite the significant one as well. And then the final one is that there needs to be some major overhauls on the final clarifiers that can be done inside this 3-year rate study as well. Both water and wastewater do include some money for engineering work to be done on Park Road. The Park Road financials and finances would be addressed in the 28, 29, and 30 rate study, as the construction for those projects are 28 through 30 at this time.
About the projects, not to steal Rick's thunder, what he's gonna come up and talk to us about here in a little bit, you said we're looking into those in the next 3 years. Would that be included in the water rate study here?
What's his
Or
project?
yeah, so I don't know how many lines or what lines we have to change from that, but,
The
That-
lead, oh,
Go.
the lead line replacement? Yeah, that's included in here.
There are, in the capital improvement plan,
Yeah.
there's a whole list of items, but those, to Mark's questions, are the biggest financial consumers. We did look at, to Daryl's question about bonding capacity, we did look at potential bonding capacity, but felt like this was probably a better way. We didn't, by doing it through this way, we're able to maintain our bonding capacity. We don't have to borrow money, and we can achieve these projects on a timeline that works with other projects that are happening in our community. But those projects, lead line, sanitary has some storm or manhole and lining work that's in there too. Those are just the more standard ones. Any other questions on that?
Part of that Park Road project that's going west toward the park, would that fall under county, or is that still going to be 100% county, city?
The utilities are owned wholly by the city.
Okay.
You want to touch on stormwater real
Yep.
quick?
So stormwater, we did do a rate report on, and we looked at, there is a small amount of O&M that goes towards stormwater, but the primary purpose of it is the capital improvement plan. So we are not doing anything outside of the current 3% increase annually that you guys already have in place. We just provided a budget for O&M and a budget annually for those capital improvement plans. So with this rate report, a capital improvement fund or depreciation fund will be created, and similar to sewer and water, an annual transfer will occur. And that annual transfer that can be funded for storm is $625,350. And we actually have an initial higher transfer similar to sewer, just based off of cash reserves for storm, of $950,000 to be transferred just by year end. So that is nothing outside of the current rate increases for stormwater, but we did look at each year the funding of what projects can be funded and how much to contribute, and then establishing that capital improvement plan, or fund, sorry. Are there any questions on storm? And same with the others, that capital improvement plan is provided in the rate report, so you guys can take a look at that. Are there any questions? All right.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion, we pass ordinance 2024-25. Do you want to do and 2024-26? All right, then I'll just do 25 on the first reading.
Motion's been made by Jamie.
Second.
Second by Daryl. All those in, Daryl Pulling, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'll make a motion, we pass 2024-26 on the first reading.
Motion's been made by Jamie. Is there a second?
Second.
Also,
Yes. Second by Gerald Baldwin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Much appreciated.
We'll email over that comparison.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian Robbins, Director of the Economic Development Corp., has Resolution 24-10, which is an expansion of our ERA. Good evening, Brian.
Evening, Council. You have the Resolution 2024-10 before you. And what that does is essentially partners off of a resolution passed back in 2018-3, no less, that establishes all of the corporation limits of the city of Greensburg as an economic revitalization area, which allows you guys to incentivize any sort of development, any sort of projects throughout the city. Kind of standard process for economic development. We annexed 8 new parcels last year, and to further kind of clarify, we were advised to go ahead and pass another resolution, this being 2024-10, establishing that new annexed area as an economic revitalization area. And before we discuss, I do want to say, and I was reading during the water, I swear I was listening to the water study and everything, but I did look on the second page, last paragraph, there is something that says November 11th for the public meeting, that we had to move that back, so it would be December 10th. That would be our next city council meeting, correct? So that would be the change on that document that you have before you for the next step in this process.
This isn't related to any project. It's literally just a local resolution that allows us to do that down the
No
road.
projects to announce.
Why was it they needed the new resolution? Because the old resolution was written that with the way we wrote the old resolution, as the city grew, that resolution, the verbiage in there, the language in there encompassed the growth.
Yeah, there was a question as to whether that would hold up if challenged or anything, as far as, because it did state that I think it was any future annexations would incorporate limits of the city of Greensburg, would be established as an economic revitalization area. We were just advised by legal to just go ahead and establish this so there's no sort of need for clarification or anything like that.
I guess that's for any future annexation, they put the same process again, if there are any more.
Yeah. It's not a big deal, but I do like the forward thinking that was done in 2018
Yeah,
to just include it, but.
And we thought we had it covered.
Yeah, we made that argument, but yeah.
Any other questions for Brian? If not, we'd take a motion to approve 24-10 on its only reading.
So moved. With the amendment to paragraph 6, right? Yeah, on the second
Yes, we will
page.
make sure the date's correct. Motion was made by,
We said it at the same time.
okay, who wants the second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Made by Rodney, seconded by Kevin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Chief McNeely, you've got a request for the council.
Evening, Council. I went ahead and prepared this statement because I knew we were going to be running a little late, so I'll try to read through it quickly. As indicated in our email, we were not awarded any funding for a COPS grant. The award letter noted that the Department of Justice only awarded 3 departments with funding in Indiana. I advised after the budget workshop a few months ago that if we did not get the federal funding, I would be coming back to ask for the funding for our 2 positions back into the budget that we've surrendered in 2023. This was done to keep veteran officers from leaving. While we still had some staff leave, we know that through conversations that 3 veteran officers decided to stay because they saw your willingness to work with us. Since then, you've made several other decisions that make us a more marketable department, and we appreciate your support in those decisions. Here's some of the reasons we would like to put those 2 positions back into our staffing numbers. One is proactivity. We're a department that thrives on the prevention of crime. Having more officers on duty allows more time for officers to look for crime that is afoot and take pride in the prevention of crime as opposed to responding to crime that has already happened. Relief, our officers have been working at minimum staffing levels for quite some time now. These men and women have never complained about the excess work, but from an administrative view, we can see their weariness. The officers are working long and odd hours, which is hurting our overtime coverage. The officers are trying to maximize their time off at home and are putting that priority in the right place. The responsibilities our officers have stepped up and taken on the additional responsibilities during that time. We look forward to spreading the departmental responsibilities out to our staff, which lessens the burden and lets them concentrate on their primary tasks. Recruitment and retention, like I mentioned previously, we believe that the work that you as the council and the Board of Works have done over the past several months make GPD much more attractive as a department, and that we will be able to recruit fully trained officers and retain them once they're here. City growth. We can see that city growth is coming with the addition of 100+ residential units and the addition of new businesses. We would like to be able to have these positions filled and the officers trained and working before the additional influx of residents and visitors comes to the city. And then the balanced budget at the end. The salary numbers that we brought to you at the budget workshop initially were with the 2 positions added back into the budget. Those numbers were reviewed by Reedy, and those numbers were also presented with the rest of the city budgets as a balanced budget. I hope that the information presented will help you in coming to the same conclusion that we did, that adding the 2 positions back into our manpower is prudent and feasible. Happy to answer any questions.
I know when we took those 2 positions out, you made the comment that we hadn't filled them anyway. So that was part of the reason why we removed them, to do that. And so now we're talking about more overtime, more hours, and we need these positions, but we've got more officers now than we did then, right? So I'm not, how does that, I guess, can you help me understand that?
Sure. 2 years ago, we were at 24 officers. We had a large influx of people leave the department, and so in response to that, we were trying to look for ways to stop the bleeding. And so our solution was, in meeting with our staff, is we got to give them some incentive, something somewhere, somehow. And so that was our solution. We don't want to operate with 22. We want to operate with 24. It's what we were doing for several years. We were very productive in those years, had some of the highest protection levels. Chief Bridges did a phenomenal job of getting us to that place. And, he and I talked about it before I came before you guys and asked for the surrendering. And, he said, you have to do what you have to do. We have to stop the people from leaving. And so that was the decision that was on it. It has nothing to do with whether we can do it with 22 or 24. It has to do with we had to stop the people from leaving.
I know, but I thought when you came up and brought up the fact that we let those 2 positions go, you'd mentioned we hadn't had 24, right? We were budgeted 24, but we weren't operating at 24 for some time, right?
Sure.
So
We're still operating at 7 less right now. And the guys they're tired. They're weary.
we're operating at 7 less. We have
We have 6 in training and 1 that's out on FMLA.
Okay.
My overtime budget I blew through in March.
This is not like a factory worker that's standing in front of a machine. We're talking about people doing a job that's life and death. And they think about that 7/24. And if we can get them the extra help, I think it's necessary that we go forward and allow those positions.
Some of you have come and ridden with some of our officers, and you know what it's like to sit behind that windshield when you pull a car over, and you don't know who's in that car in front of you. And that's, they're dealing that every day. We know what it was when we signed up, obviously, and that's always the argument. Well, you knew what it was when it signed up, sure. Nobody wants to get shot or hurt, or we'd all like to go home, go to every call and it be peaceful and everybody gets along, but that's not our line of work. So
Nor is it any fun to get a call of a possible break-in and having to walk down the hallway with gun in hand and checking every corner. Sure. I've been there and I've done that. It's not fun.
So where are you at in the process of recruiting?
So we're currently full, like all of our positions are full. Andrew, that we swore in tonight, was our last one, so we don't have any recruiting going on at this point in time.
So with this, you said we had you're down 7, 1 FMLA,
Yep.
6 open,
6 that are in training.
6 are in
They've all been
training.
hired. Yeah, all been hired, sorry.
Gotcha.
They've
So
all been hired, they're in training. We have
And that's
3,
a 6-month or so process, or?
the training process,
Yes.
it's 16 weeks at the academy and then another 16 weeks when they get back, so 32 weeks.
Okay.
It takes us a little over, you do remember, Julie,
It's right out of year.
right at a year to go from when they put their application in to when they're released on their own.
So I think, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe what I'm thinking, it probably need to come as an additional appropriation, right? In a form of an ordinance to the council to be able to do that. It'd take 2 readings, and I think that would allow us to take the time to look at what's it gonna do to the budget, where would it fit in? And so maybe that's more appropriate to bring that next month at the meeting, is the additional appropriation of, because we left some of the money in there because we anticipated the potential of COPS grant, right? And so it wouldn't even be the entire amount, it'd be.
We left all the benefits and all the federal requirement stuff, we just took the salaries out.
Yeah, okay, so yeah.
I don't think we can amend the budget until the budget's in effect.
Correct.
So I think that we would have to do first reading in January. It doesn't have to be in January because we just can't have it run negative at the end of the year. So it can, in theory, be made as a decision to support the positions, and then an additional appropriation be done sometime in 2025, because the money doesn't have to be there when you hire them, it just has to be there when you get to the end of the year and have payroll balance. But I think the chief needs some type, chief and I and Amy need some kind of guidance, and it doesn't have to be today, but it is also a process that does take a minute.
Yeah, if we can get a vote of support, not necessarily that everything's done, we can go ahead and start the recruitment.
But if we wouldn't be able to do a second reading on it until February, right?
It would have, correct, for it to be sort of like official, yeah, we would have to have the additional appropriation to hire the position, or to pay the positions. If the council were willing to offer support for the concept and the idea, then that process could begin earlier, because you don't have to have the additional appropriation funded. There just has to be a commitment to fund it.
And then that way, you may not have to appropriate as much money depending on how much you actually need by the time you get to that point in the year where you need the money, depending on the fluctuation of the staff.
Could be 2 months of salary that we don't have to appropriate.
Exactly.
Chief, what's the timeline on your training?
So.
The 6 that are in training?
So we're about 5 weeks out from 3 getting released on their own. We have 2 in the academy, they're just over the halfway mark, and then Andrew reports for training January 6th, 7th, something like that. So he's still 6 months out or so, 4 months.
So any of the 16-week training that happens after the academy, none of that can really happen ahead of time, or none of that can be circumvented before they go?
So yeah, we can do some of that, but until you get through the academy, we can't just bring somebody back and release them. So it'll still take, they'll have a modified when they come back. So when Andrew goes, he'll have a month and a half or 2 months under his belt at the fort.
Is there anything the council would like to see before the December meeting? I think that's what I'm sensing, is some time to think on this and contemplate.
I'd just like to go back to the budget and double check, because we made other budget decisions based on where we were at, right? And so that's the other thing, is just making sure where there's at. That's my opinion on it. I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I think we just need to make sure those things are there. So.
Can we give him approval that we are seriously considering following through with his request?
Do a vote of support?
Really solid maybe?
Maybe Maybe in December, I think.
Maybe let's try to garner any information that anyone up here would like to have between now and December. And then a vote of support and confidence to add the positions to the payroll in December may be the appropriate timing for implementation in the 2025, 24, because there is money still for 24 if you hired somebody in 2 weeks in December, but that's unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
So for 25. And that would give everybody time to think about what information you'd like to see. I can work with you on that. You can tell your team that there's, seems to be genuine interest.
Absolutely. It means a lot to them.
Thank you.
I think that's the way to put it. Obviously, we're gonna err on the side of safety. And if we can fit it in the budget, that's what we need to do.
Just want to leave this subject with a positive ending at this time.
Works for me. Thanks for your consideration.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
I think it makes the minutes clear if we do an official motion to table that.
Make a motion, we table.
Motion's been made by Jamie, second by Kevin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Thanks, Chief. Rick, you've got an update for us on our lead and copper letters. More of a point of information for everyone, right?
I do. Good evening. You might have received a letter in the mail. EPA mandated utilities to go out and do a lead service line inventory, which is a galvanized line. So the last couple of years, my guys went out of 5,400 services. They visually inspected all of them. We had to notify from the utility side if we had a galvanized line, that residence, to the service line on the homeowner side, or if we couldn't figure it out, an unknown letter. So there was 3 letters that went out. We have 10 years on the utility side to replace all the service lines, which we have roughly 150 left to do. So we've done very well since the original rule in 92 to get rid of the galvanized lead service. I think we had 800 and some letters that went out on the homeowner side, and it's a notification letter to them that they have a galvanized line on their side, and they're not required to change that out, but we encourage it. I think we had 100 and some unknowns, and I think it says in the letter, it did say in the letter to contact me to schedule a time to send somebody out to see if we can help them figure out their material on their side. The utility side, we have 10 years to do it. I think I already mentioned that. I have it planned to get it done in the next 3 years. When this started 2 years ago, we had roughly 200. We're down to 150 now, is where we're at. Any questions? Good job. We're working on it.
For point of clarification, on our side of the meter, from ours to the main is
We pay
our-
for that.
And on the other side?
On the other side, it's the homeowner's responsibility. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Rick. Him and his team have been very attentive to this since I've been here, but obviously for the last 30 years, which puts us in a much, much better position than a lot of communities, much bigger and much more advanced in their utility work. So appreciate the team for doing that. Street Commissioner Klostercamper, while he's making his way up here, a quick point of information. So the bond proceeds do have dollars left. There will be a larger conversation coming about those as we approach the end of the project closeout. We can purchase equipment with it. This is outside of our contract with Greg Martz and GM Development. The Board of Works previously did recommend purchasing this equipment with these funds. It is our money. It's available to us. But Amy and I think it's probably best if the council approves the expenditure of those bond funds, should you choose to purchase equipment. We can purchase the equipment. It's just not inside our GMP, or guaranteed maximum price. So that's why it's here. It did come with favorable recommendation from the board, but why don't you tell us what you want, Mark?
Okay, now that we're in the new facility we're operating, there's a couple pieces of equipment we're lacking. One, we have a large overhead storage area. We have no forklift in place. We have no way to get most of our supplies up there. We're currently renting one, and we're still in the process of getting that finalized. The second item is, the new salt building's so big, we don't have anything to reach into it, to the back of it, to store material in it. So we've been looking at a telehandler with about a 40-foot boom, and we're also gonna get with forks, a material bucket, and we're gonna get what they call a man box on it, that we can actually use around town when we do street light repairs, things like that. So it's a multi-purpose piece of equipment. And that one, we have found one, we've got a firm quote, and the Board of Works approved that purchase tonight, pending your approval for us to go ahead and expend the funds to make that purchase.
What's the anticipated amount that's going to be available to use on the excess bond funds that was created from the interest that was earned over this time period?
Is that what was in the letter below? So like,
around
the fire department, it was $415,704.19. And then the other, public works building was $740,768.73. So it's well within that 740,000.
So that's what's still left after the solar panels and all the other stuff that we did.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sorry, the street department didn't get any of that, but yeah.
The numbers, those are very close ballpark numbers. Interest is a vast majority of that, and then the price